Someone else that's very loyal though is Martin Scorsese, and
Segway.
his new movie is coming out in May with Leonardo DiCaprio, and it is called Killers of the Flower Moon. Now, this is actually based on a true story, and I heard about this and I read about it, and the cast alone is amazing for this. De Niro, DiCaprio, John Lithgow, Brendan Fraser, Jesse Plemons, and then Scorsese himself directing, like a
Fat
huge
Damon's in
cast.
it?
Fat Damon's he's in here. He's actually very skinny now, Sabrina. He's
That's what I
kicked
call
some
Jesse
ass for
Plemons.
himself.
I call him Fat
Yeah.
Damon.
But it's called The Killers of the Flower Moon. Now, DiCaprio will portray the brave killer who married into a Native American tribe so that he could help his uncle brutally murder all their members for their money. So this dates back to the 1920s, and it centers around an FBI investigation into a string of murders on this true story, and 24 Native Americans were killed during the slayings in Oklahoma. So, I mean, it's kind of, like I said, it comes out in May, and it's based off a novel, too, because they wrote a book, of course, upon this, and then they wrote the script for this.
It's based off an uncovered fucking section of our history that people don't want anyone to know about. Is what it's based off of. I mean, yes, there was a novel, but it's literally based on a true story about, that they know of 24 Native Americans who were murdered for oil that was on their land. And it's super fucked up. It happened in the 20s. It's a real fucking thing. And the fact that it was like at the inception of the FBI. So it was like one of the first like major cases that ever happened with the FBI. And the uncle, who is portrayed by
De Niro.
Thank you. His name was William Hale, the actual character that he's playing.
Yeah.
And he got his nephew, which is Leonardo DiCaprio. And he plays Ernest Burkhart, who he basically goes in and marries this Indian woman. Her real name was Molly Kyle, who's played by Lily Gladstone, and basically marries into the family, because the only way for an outsider to get what they called, it was kind of like basically a share of stock. It was called a head right. And the only way that you could get a head right, because it was kind of owned through the government, but on Indian land, was to marry into a family. And as soon as he married her, the family members just started dropping like flies, and they wound up inheriting all the money. Like, but someone straight up murdered, like shot in the back of the head.
Yeah.
Like, so it wasn't it wasn't all even like, oh, maybe something happened. But because it was Native Americans, no one really gave a fuck. And like, until it got like so out of control. But like at one point, I don't want to spoil the story for people who don't know history or don't know like what is going to happen.
It's a great story though.
It's riveting. It's fucked up, as most American history is. And I'm actually really, for someone like Martin Scorsese to do this, I think it's like, you can't go. I can't wait to see it, honestly. And I don't even like Leonardo DiCaprio. Everyone knows that I do not care for him, but I'm really excited to see this movie.
I know. I'm too. Like, there's no trailer yet, which I'm surprised. It's getting very close, and there's no trailer.
They shot by Spokane, by the way. Just FYI.
Oh, did they? Really? Yeah. That's awesome. And even DiCaprio was saying it's a breathtaking movie. It's like one of his favorite things he's done, which is it says a lot, But of course, this is
around the world. That guy.
I mean, yeah, and like they're saying, I mean, it's going to be probably nominated for a lot of shit. It just seems like it's one of those movies, and it's it's Scorsese, and like honestly, like this seems like something that he would do. And for me, like the cast seems amazing. Brendan Fraser too, coming in hot. Oh yeah, right?
Brendan Fraser's in it. Yeah.
I was like, that's fucking awesome. This guy's coming back hot, and I was working for Scorsese. He's on like high right now. He's probably going nuts. Sure. He's probably so excited.
Mm-hmm.
Like his phone's buzzing off the chain. Jake, what do you think about this? Does this sound like a good premise to you? Do you think you'll go see this movie?
Yeah, I love stuff like this. I was just kind of reading through the article while you guys were chatting about it, and it makes me sad that people are even capable of this. So I think it's good that they're bringing it to light. It's mankind is weird,
fucked,
and
yeah, I mean, like they're just their land. There's oil in their land, So it's like they strike the gold mine, and all of a sudden, like people are going to take advantage of them.
Mm-hmm.
Which had happened a lot already.
I was kind of thinking like, there's like the Beverly Hillbillies story. It's a similar thing, but
it's kind of like that.
Obviously, in that show, clearly they're like,
but it's different. But
yes, I was gonna say they find land on these people's, they find oil on these people's land, and in that story, everything was great. They got what they wanted. They got a big house. Everybody took care of them, which is the complete opposite of this. So it's like, I don't know. It kind of makes you wonder how much of the FBI was involved with storytelling, you know?
And it took so long for them to actually do something about it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing, like the story, it's like how many people died before they finally like started putting the pieces together.
24 people
24,
died,
yeah.
that they
until
know
they
of.
finally became like a suspect. It's like, don't blame the white guy, you know what I mean? Which is pretty fucked up.
And he was poisoning the wife, and then like I think he was indicted before, like, and she was able to recover, you know, which is, you know.
So
again,
do they ultimately not get the money for this? Do they end up losing in the end?
We're not gonna spoil that, Jake. We're not gonna spoil that.
Yeah.
We are not going to spoil that because that's too much. Too much.
I know the historical story, so I know what happens. But you know, it's a lot. There's like there's an arc of how it goes, and like they do have control, and they do not. It's a lot of things. But I probably said too much by saying that she makes it out alive. But that's.
But if you put it in perspective, can go look it up. It's fine.
Yeah, it's true. But if you put it in perspective,
silver screen.
It's different. But if you put it in perspective, they had $30 million. That's how much they got. $30 million. It's a lot of freaking money back then. In the 20s. It's a lot of money back in the 20s.
It's ridiculous. That's like
$30 million.
Dollars.
And so they just had a target on their back, you know? And then they think you fall in love and all this. And in Hale, he was convicted for his involvement for 3 years only. For 3 years later for 2 decades. For 2 decades. So for 2 decades, but I mean, that's it. You know, that's still a long time, but not, I mean, for how many people he killed, I don't know.
Yeah, and then he got out on parole, which is fucking insane.
Yeah,
like,
got parole in 1947.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a really very interesting story, and it shows a dark point in American history, and I'm glad that they're making this movie to shed light upon it. And there's not a lot of, you know, like we still believe in Christopher Columbus discovered America, which is a fucking crock of horseshit. So it's nice that they're shedding light to some real American history where it shows that Native Americans have been taken advantage of by the people of this country that we call home, even though it was their home. Like I think that I think they need to do more of this, and I think they also need to teach American history properly in school, so that when you grow up, you're not like, "Yay, Christopher Columbus, who was actually a giant fucking douchebag." Like, I'm just saying, he's Italian. I'm Italian. When I grew up, I was like, Christopher Columbus. I used to dress up like a pilgrim in my Catholic school, and half the kids dressed up like Indians, half the kids dressed up pilgrims. We had a nice lunch, and it was like, everything's great. And I'm like, this is so false. Like, if you look at history, it is so fucking false. Like, the way that it's portrayed to most people growing up. And like, I'm all for stuff like this coming out in the media, because it will educate people no matter what. And like, if you just watch it, you'd be like, what the fuck? This is based on a true story. And you could Google your way through the reality of it, you know, which I think is important, because a lot of people wouldn't know to do that otherwise. It brings light to some fucked up shit that went on. And I appreciate that. I don't think there's any harm in knowledge.